All right, so let's look in a little bit more detail on these sources of loans. First, let's start with short-term loans. It's typically less than a year, more like 90 days. You borrow and pay within 12 months. The contract, which evidences that loan, is a promissory note, where it has the amount, the repayment schedule for the principal, the interest rate, collateral, if any, and positive and negative covenants. A covenant is a promise made. A positive comment means I will do something. In other words, I will provide you, the bank, financial statements within 10 days of the close of every month. A negative covenant is something I will not do. I will not take your proceeds of your loan and give all of management a raise. That would be a negative covenant. I promise not to spend money in a way that distributes your money to the current owners or current managers of the business. Next is there may be a compensating balance requirement, which means that you borrow money, but you have to put some of it on deposit, non-interest bearing, at the bank so that their loan is more secure. So let's do the math very simply. For an example of you borrow 10,000 at 8%, but there's a 10% compensating balance requirement. That means you only receive 10,000 minus 10% or $9,000. And yet when it comes time to pay interest, you're going to be charged interest of 8%, not times 9,000, but times 10,000, even though you didn't have it all in your control. So the interest you pay will be $800. The effective amount of loan that you got that you can use is 9,000. So the rate of interest is actually 8.9%. Pretty tricky. They can increase the interest rate by hiding it in a compensating balance requirement. The second alternative is line of credit. There are two broad types of line of credit. I prefer the revolver because it's a safer one to have, where you have an agreement with the bank where they agree to have a maximum amount they'll lend you. And you can draw on it any time, any given day, and you could pay back when you have money. So it is allowed to be quite variable, and that's why it's called revolving, like a revolving door. The borrower can do it on a daily basis, on a phone call or now electronic communication. And then the borrower, this is the bad part, the borrower pays a commitment fee, for example, 0.25% of the total amount that is committed. Now that's paid whether or not you borrow anything. So that's just for the bank to agree to let you have the line of credit. The interest rate is usually variable, and it's based usually on prime plus, which is just a reference rate that banks use to price different loans to different clients with different risk profiles. And the other choice is LIBOR. Although LIBOR is ending in 2021, so that is not going to be a long-term type of index that we can use for pricing interest rate. And we may have what's called a cleanup clause, whereby once a year you have to draw that line of credit all the way down to zero, where you owe nothing. And that's to assure the bank that you're not using a short-term loan, like a line of credit, for long-term needs, like buying factory equipment. So that's why they have the provision for a cleanup period. The second type of line of credit is an informal one, where the company has great relationship, great performance, and the bank says, just as a conversation, that if you need up to X amount of dollars, we'll lend it to you, assuming nothing adverse has happened to your business. And that's kind of an old-fashioned banker relationship. Now, when there's now need, the banker comes through with their analysis and grants the loan, and then they'll create paperwork, because once they give you some money by way of a loan, they need to document exactly what are the terms from that loan. So you'll then have a promissory note at that stage. But notice the big difference is you don't have to pay the upfront commitment fee that you did in a more classic revolving line of credit. The third choice is commercial paper. So this tends to be unsecured promissory notes that a large creditworthy company can issue to institutional investors, such as insurance companies, pension plans, or other corporations. And corporations use this to borrow money very efficiently at lower costs because they're cutting out the middleman. There is no commercial bank or insurance company in the middle. They go straight to the source of money. Next is companies tend to roll over. So as one matures, they borrow more with a different term, and that way they could keep their interest rates low because, as mentioned, short-term interest rates tend to be lower than long-term interest rate. Also, they could adjust the needs very quickly. If they don't need cash, they pay it off quickly and they're done. If they need more, they modify the next renewal or rollover of the next round of commercial paper. So it has some practical advantages as well. And investors attracted to this because it's a great company with good rates. And furthermore, there might be some rating associated with the company by way of a bond rating agency, Fitch's, Moody's, or Standard & Poor's, or specific to one of the commercial papers being sold by the company. And that could be done through the nationally registered statistical rating organization. So NRSRO are what they're called. And it's a larger group that includes the bond rating agencies, but also some others that are capable of doing this and filing those documents with the SEC. Compensating balances we talked about before, but these are the minimum amounts that we need to support a loan balance or sometimes to support services. So if you use certain functions like check clearing services or bill paying services or lockbox services, they may be provided to you as long as you maintain certain balances at the bank. The financial impact is this is a hidden cost of running your business because you're foregoing collecting some interest that you otherwise would collect, but you're leaving in a bank with zero interest. So it's a hidden cost to the business. Interest costs and collateral are also common terms that you'll see. Interest rates, of course, because they're not going to lend it for nothing. But how is it derived? As mentioned, many are based on a prime rate, sometimes called the reference rate, plus some margin amount over it. Example, prime plus 1. We had many loans, variable loans, that were using LIBOR. LIBOR is going to be disconnected in 2021, so there are some old loans out there. I'm sure billions of dollars of loans that are based on LIBORs, which will have to shift over to a new index later on. Collateral is something that supports a loan. So if you don't make payments, the lender can take possession of that collateral. These could be things like marketable securities or bonds, land, building equipment, or it could be inventory and receivables. In the areas of working capital financing, it's often inventory and receivables because that's why you're borrowing the money. So if you have a revolving line of credit, the things that fluctuate month to month are typically inventory and receivables. So it seems logical and reasonable that the bank would require you to pledge your receivables and inventory to support the loan that was intended for working capital. Here's some pictures of ways to move money other than Bitcoin, right? So we have currency, although most companies don't function with currency unless you're a retail store or something. We have checks where money moves because you're creating a piece of paper, a draft on your bank account, so that the recipient of the check will then deposit in their bank. Their bank would clear that check to get money from your bank to make sure it's there. So notice that a check isn't actually good until it clears the banking system. And in the event that you wrote a check and when the holder of the check presents that check for a payment and you don't have the balance, it'll be bounced, what we call insufficient funds. So there's some complication and risk when you pay by check. The next is a row of Visa cards. Like one is the Visa Gold, which is a Visa credit card, which is a loan. It's kind of like a line of credit where the credit card company allows you to borrow up to a certain amount by having charges and you're carrying balances. So that's what is like a loan that makes it convenient for you to transact business. The one on the right is Visa Gold with the word debit next to it. This is not credit card at all. You're taking money directly out of your account. It could be a savings account, could be a checking account, but there is no risk taken by the bank here because they're just taking money straight out of your account. The bottom left is a graph or an image of the ACH. It's the automated clearinghouse, and this is a very efficient way to move money from company to company typically, where one company initiates a transfer through the ACH. Overnight, the clearinghouse will make sure that the money is there and put it into the account that it's intended. So it takes about a day, 2 at the most, and what that indicates is a low-cost way to electronically move money. It's very popular. Next is wire transfer. This is an expensive way to move money. Why? Because it's bank to bank. And before The bank will wire money, they make sure you have it, and then they make sure that the money that they send is immediately useful and good funds to the recipient. So wire transfers are very precise. The money moves instantaneously, where it's out of your account into the other account, and the other party can use the money immediately. There's no waiting for clearing of a check or clearing of ACH. Now, the bad news is they're expensive. So they're there, high quality way of moving money. However, you pay for what you get, and there's typically wiring charges.